Well, I was going to say, I hope you don't like the concept of greenwashing too much, because it's not that great. But thank you for the introduction. My name is Jules Besnainou. I'm the Executive Director of Cleantech for Europe, and we represent the next generation of European industry, the startups, the scale-ups, the venture capital investors that are trying to have this new economy emerge. We do so by building bridges between this community and the community of policymakers. And so you might ask, what is Cleantech, as a first question? And I think it was referred to both by Prime Minister Renzi yesterday and by Minister Kikilias as the technology that can help get us out of the climate crisis, right? I think he said technology versus ideology. So clean technologies refer to this set of new innovations that can both solve immense problems for us and deliver positive results for investors. In practice, this means technologies that can change our energy system, so green hydrogen, of course, but also long-duration energy storage and grid technologies. In transport, we're talking about electrification, of course, but also about aviation fuels and shipping fuels. In industry, we mean changing existing processes to move to low-carbon steel and cement, for instance. Same in agriculture and many more industries. The next question is, now that we've defined clean tech, how is Europe doing in this sector and in this set of technologies? And the reality is we're doing extremely well when it comes to inventing and developing these technologies. We've built a research ecosystem and a startup ecosystem that is quite extraordinary, honestly, both in continental Europe, in the UK, and a number of other countries. The big difficulty that we have is that when these technologies reach maturity, when they're ready to get deployed, when basically they need to shift from having raised a few tens of millions of euros to validate their technology to hundreds of millions of euros, to billions of euros in debt, to build their plants, to build their factories, this is where Europe is really bad and really struggles, as usual. These very promising technologies, they lack the financing to build their first plants, they lack demand, they lack appropriate regulation, and just a conducive environment. And why is this a big problem? Well, because as was discussed as well yesterday, the US passed the Inflation Reduction Act last year, which pours hundreds of billions of dollars of tax credits and grants to these very clean technologies. China is doing the same in a number of ways. And the thing is, it's proving quite successful. If you look at the latest data from Rhodium Group in the US, you will see a huge jump in manufacturing investments in the US following the Inflation Reduction Act. And what this means is we're not just talking about decarbonization anymore. We're talking about our industrial leadership, we're talking about jobs for the next decades, and we're talking generally about our prosperity and being able to sustain our economic models. And so we really need to ask ourselves, what can we do to support this clean tech sector? What can we do to have this next generation of EU industry emerge? And we at Cleantech for Europe believe that it starts with a few simple steps, but obviously it starts with financing. And it doesn't mean necessarily doing a huge subsidy package. I mean, the US did that because they could only do that. They didn't have the votes to do anything else. But it could be, leveraging better the private sector, creating the rules for institutional investors to invest more in this investment category. It could be mobilizing public guarantees, for instance, to backstop some of this risk and allow private investors to put more money in the sector. We obviously need more demand, so that goes through public and private procurement. Large industrials need to get much, much better at adopting these new technologies and stop kind of defending their legacy ones. It also goes through a much more adaptive and fast-adapting regulation, right? If you look at standards, for instance, or conditions for some of these technologies to access markets, it's still extremely hard to do for a number of new technologies. So I will leave you with this thought of tomorrow there's a very important vote in the European Parliament on the Net Zero Industry Act. It's basically a clean tech act. It's starting to take a positive shape, but it needs to go with much, much more ambitious financing policies for these strategic technologies to rise in Europe with success.